American communities die for a small number of reasons. The industry leaves, the water runs out, the land becomes uninhabitable, or the people who were going to stay find somewhere better to go. All of those forces are currently active and documentable in specific American places right now. Some of these places are already nearly gone. Some still have a few thousand people who haven't fully processed what the next 15 years look like. These are the 17 places in America that will become ghost towns by 2040. Number 17, Ileton, Sacramento County, California. Ileton is a small Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta town in Sacramento County with a current population of approximately 800 people, down from approximately 1,800 in 1980. The town was built on a peat island in the Delta, the reclaimed wetland created by 19th century levee construction that allowed Sacramento Delta farmland to become some of the most productive in California. The peat soil of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta is the specific existential threat. Peat soil oxidizes and compresses when drained for agriculture, and the Delta Islands that have been farmed since the 1870s have subsided dramatically. Some Delta Islands now sit 15 to 20 feet below sea level, held above water only by the levee network. The USGS and the California Department of Water Resources have documented the ongoing subsidence. A major earthquake along the Hayward or Sacramento area fault systems, or a combination of storm surge and sea level rise overtopping levees, would flood the subsided Delta Islands. Ileton's specific situation is the combination of subsidence, aging levee infrastructure, and the long-term trajectory of sea level rise that makes the delta increasingly difficult and expensive to maintain against flooding. The economic base of the town, the agricultural economy, and the recreational fishing industry is already thin. The levee maintenance costs are rising as the infrastructure ages, and sea level rise increases the pressure on the levee system. Number 16, Ajo, Pima County, Arizona. Ajo is a former copper mining town in southwestern Pima County, Arizona, 35 miles from the Mexican border and approximately 120 miles from Tucson. The New Cornelia copper mine, an open-pit mine operated by Phelps Dodge that was once the largest open-pit copper mine in the United States, shut down in 1985 when copper prices collapsed, eliminating the primary employer of a town of approximately 5,500 people essentially overnight. Ajo's population has declined from approximately 5,500 in 1980 to approximately 3,300 as of recent counts. The town has a remarkable Spanish colonial revival, Downtown Plaza, designed in 1917 by Josler architect Mercer Morse and built by the mining company as the town center, that is genuinely beautiful and that sits in the middle of an economically fragile community with no economic replacement for the mining economy it lost 40 years ago. The heat is the compounding factor. Ajo is in the Sonoran Desert at an elevation of approximately 1,800 feet, with summer temperatures regularly exceeding 105 degrees Fahrenheit. The water source is groundwater from a basin that the mine previously drew on. The current trajectory, slow population loss, aging demographic, no substantial economic recovery, is not catastrophic in pace, but is consistent in direction. Number 15, Centralia, Columbia County, Pennsylvania. Centralia earns every list it appears on. Population, approximately 5 to 15 people, from approximately 1,000 in 1980. Zip code, revoked 2002. Mine fire, burning since May 1962, estimated remaining life 100 to 250 years. Underground temperature in some areas, above 800 degrees Fahrenheit. The remaining residents have legal life tenancies, meaning they can stay until they die, and then the borough effectively ceases to exist. The mine fire beneath Centralia burns through the Buck Mountain vein of anthracite coal, a seam that was ignited in May 1962 when burning trash in a dump extended to an exposed coal seam. The fire spread into the mine network beneath the town and has been propagating slowly through the coal seam ever since. Carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide vent through surface cracks. In 1981, a 14-year-old named Todd Domboski fell through a sinkhole approximately 150 feet deep that opened suddenly in his yard. He survived by holding onto tree roots. There is no mechanism by which Centralia recovers. The coal fire does not go out on a human timeline. The remaining residents will age and pass. The borough designation may technically persist, but the populated community will not. Centralia is not becoming a ghost town. It already is one. Number 14, Empire, Nevada, Pershing County. Empire is an unincorporated community in Pershing County, Nevada, approximately 90 miles northeast of Reno, that was built as a company town by the U.S. Gypsum Company to house workers at its gypsum mine and wallboard manufacturing plant. At its peak, Empire had approximately 700 residents, its own zip code, its own post office, its own school, a swimming pool, and a golf course, all maintained by the company. In 2011, U.S. Gypsum closed the mine and plant following a collapse in wallboard demand driven by the 2008 to 2009 housing market crash. Empire's post office was closed. The school was closed. The residents were given notice to vacate company housing. The population dropped from approximately 700 to essentially zero within a year. Empire was, in the literal sense of the term, a ghost town by 2012. The mine and plant reopened in 2012 as housing demand recovered. The population returned to a working level. Empire still exists, but its specific history, a community that went to zero and came back, illustrates the fragility of single-employer communities in a way that no theoretical description can match. Number 13, Cairo, Alexander County, Illinois. Cairo, pronounced Cairo, sits at the southernmost tip of Illinois, where the Mississippi and Ohio rivers converge. A strategic position that made it a significant Civil War staging ground and a 19th century river trade hub. The city's population has declined from approximately 15,000 at its peak to approximately 1,700 as of the 2020 census. The trajectory is not ambiguous. Cairo has lost approximately 88% of its peak population. The physical infrastructure of the city, the historic commercial buildings, the Victorian residential blocks, the civic buildings, is largely standing but deteriorating without the tax base to maintain it. The water and sewer systems have documented deferred maintenance issues. The school district has been consolidating and struggling. The levee system that keeps the city above water at the junction of two major rivers requires ongoing investment that a city of 1,700 cannot generate from its tax base. By 2040, Cairo will either have received significant state or federal investment that is not currently in place, or it will have fewer than 1,000 residents with the corresponding institutional collapses, school closure, reduced municipal services, further property abandonment, that shrinkage below a threshold produces. Number 12, Butte, Montana, Silver Bow County. Butte is a case study in the long tale of mining boom and bust. The richest hill on Earth, the copper and silver deposits of Butte's Berkeley Pit and the surrounding Anaconda Copper Mining Company operations, made Butte one of the wealthiest and most populous cities in the American West in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The city had a peak population of approximately 100,000 in 1917. The 2020 census count for Butte Silver Bow, the consolidated city-county, is approximately 34,494. The Berkeley Pit, the open-pit copper mine that replaced the underground mines beginning in the 1950s, was active until 1982, when Anaconda shut down operations. The pit has been filling with highly acidic, heavy metal-laden groundwater ever since. The current water level in the Berkeley Pit is a documented Superfund concern. When the pit water reaches the critical water level, a threshold at which the contaminated water will begin flowing into the regional groundwater system, it requires active treatment to prevent. That treatment infrastructure was being developed under EPA Superfund requirements as of 2025. Butte's population has been slowly declining since the 1917 peak, with some stabilization in recent decades. It is not on a 2040 extinction trajectory. It is on a slow decline trajectory that, absent economic recovery, produces a city of 25,000 to 28,000 by 2040 from 34,000 today. Smaller, but not a ghost town in the strict sense. Number 11. Pocomoke City, Worcester County, Maryland. Pocomoke City is a small city of approximately 4,100 people on the Pocomoke River on Maryland's eastern shore. It is included on this list not for current crisis, but for the specific coastal flood risk trajectory that affects lower-lying communities on the Chesapeake Bay's eastern shore. Sea level rise in the Chesapeake Bay region has been measured by NOAA at rates significantly above the global average, approximately 3 to 4 millimeters per year at some bay monitoring stations. Due to a combination of actual sea level rise from climate change and land subsidence from groundwater withdrawal and glacial isostatic adjustment. The eastern shore of Maryland has numerous small communities that are projected by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources and NOAA flood modeling to experience increasingly frequent and eventually permanent inundation by 2050 and beyond. Pocomoke City's lower-lying sections are in the flood risk zone, and the Pocomoke River's regular flooding during storm events has been documented to increase in frequency and severity. Communities like Deal Island, Crisfield, and Smith Island in the same region are further along the inundation trajectory than Pocomoke City, with Smith Island in particular being discussed by the National Park Service and Maryland state agencies as a community likely to require managed retreat within the coming decades. Number 10. Johnstown, Cambria County, Pennsylvania. Johnstown is one of the more instructive examples of a city that survived catastrophe and then lost the battle with economics. The 1889 Johnstown flood, caused by the failure of the South Fork Dam, killed 2,209 people in one of the worst peacetime disasters in American history. The city rebuilt. The 1936 Johnstown flood, a natural event, killed 25 people and caused enormous damage. The city rebuilt again. The 1977 Johnstown flood killed 84 people. The city rebuilt. What Johnstown could not rebuild from was the collapse of the American steel industry in the 1980s. The Bethlehem steel operations in the Johnstown area, which had employed tens of thousands of workers and sustained the city's economy through the flood recoveries, contracted dramatically through the 1980s and had largely ceased by the 1990s. The city's population peaked at approximately 67,000 in 1920. The 2020 census counted approximately 18,411 residents. Johnstown has been losing population consistently for decades. The current rate of decline, if continued, produces a city of approximately 12,000 to 14,000 by 2040. Not a ghost town, but a city whose public infrastructure, school system, and civic institutions were designed for 3 to 5 times its current population, creating the specific fiscal and functional pressures that accompany shrinkage at this scale. Number 9. Thermal, Riverside County, California. Thermal is an unincorporated community in the Coachella Valley of Riverside County with a population of approximately 2,900, primarily Latino farm worker residents. The community is located at approximately 113 feet below sea level in the Salton Trough, one of the lowest elevations in the continental United States, and experiences summer temperatures that regularly exceed 120 degrees Fahrenheit in recent years, making it one of the hottest permanently inhabited places in the United States. The heat exposure in Thermal and the surrounding Coachella Valley farm worker communities is a documented public health crisis. The National Weather Service has issued excessive heat warnings for the area with increasing frequency. The combination of outdoor agricultural labor requirements, inadequate cooling infrastructure in lower-income housing, and temperatures that are physiologically dangerous for outdoor workers has produced documented heat illness and heat death in the farm worker population. Climate projections for the Coachella Valley show continued summer temperature increases of 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit above current levels by mid-century under most emission scenarios. The specific question for Thermal is not whether the community will disappear by 2040 in the technical sense, but whether the living conditions for a lower-income agricultural community in a place that routinely exceeds 120 degrees Fahrenheit in summer become incompatible with sustained year-round habitation. Number 8. Wallace, Idaho, Shoshone County. Wallace in Shoshone County, Idaho, is a former silver and lead mining town in the Coeur d'Alene Mountains that has been in population decline since the silver mining industry contracted in the latter half of the 20th century. The current population is approximately 750 people, down from approximately 2,800 in 1960. The Bunker Hill Mine and Smelter Complex, once the largest silver-lead-zinc mine in the United States, was located in nearby Smelterville and Kellogg and operated until 1981. The complex produced the Bunker Hill Superfund site, one of the largest in the United States, covering approximately 21 square miles of the Coeur d'Alene River Basin that received decades of mine tailings, smelter emissions, and contaminated water. Children in the area had documented elevated blood lead levels for decades following the mine's operation. Wallace has survived and to some extent reinvented itself through heritage tourism. The town has an intact Victorian commercial district that was designated a National Historic Landmark District, and the Northern Pacific Railway Depot Museum. The town also claims to be the last city in the United States to be removed from an interstate highway map, having been entirely bypassed by a 1991 viaduct construction of I-90 over the town. Wallace's trajectory is one of the slower declines. The tourism identity has provided some stability, but the structural economic challenges of a small mining town with 750 people are real. Number 7. Whittier, Alaska, Valdez-Cordova Census Area. Whittier, Alaska, is a small community of approximately 300 people built in the early 1940s as a military port facility on Passage Canal in Prince William Sound, accessible from the road system only through the Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel, the longest highway tunnel in North America at 2.5 miles, shared with the Alaska Railroad and open to road traffic only at scheduled alternating one-way windows. The entire year-round population of Whittier lives in a single 14-story building, the Begich Towers, a former Army barracks converted to residential use, which also houses the post office, a grocery store, a church, the school, and the other community functions that in most towns would be distributed across multiple buildings and blocks. The building is the town. Whittier has approximately 300 year-round residents and a summer tourism season driven by cruise ship port calls and sport fishing. The tunnel that makes it accessible also makes it expensive to supply and limit in the kind of spontaneous commerce that sustains small towns. The specific risk, if the economic rationale for the port function diminishes, the 300 year-round residents in one building in a tunnel-accessed community on Prince William Sound have limited alternatives. Number 6. Corcoran, Kings County, California. Corcoran is a small city of approximately 21,000 people in Kings County in the San Joaquin Valley, a community that is surrounded by California State Prison Corcoran and the J.G. Boswell Company's agricultural operations, making it one of the more economically dependent single-institution communities in California's Central Valley. The specific existential threat to Corcoran is the ground beneath it. The Kings County area of the San Joaquin Valley is among the most severely affected by agricultural groundwater overdraft in California, having experienced documented land subsidence of more than 8 feet in some areas since the early 20th century. A USGS study published in 2016 documented subsidence rates in the Corcoran area of approximately 2 feet per year during the 2014 to 2015 drought, when groundwater pumping accelerated dramatically as surface water deliveries were cut. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, enacted by California in 2014, requires groundwater basins to achieve sustainability by 2040. And sustainability in this context means dramatically reducing the groundwater extraction that has been sustaining San Joaquin Valley agriculture. For Corcoran and similar Kings County communities, The SGMA required reduction in groundwater pumping means the agricultural economy that surrounds and sustains them will contract significantly. Number 5. Bombay Beach, Imperial County, California. Bombay Beach is a small community on the eastern shore of the Salton Sea, the accidental inland sea created by an irrigation canal break in 1905, with a current population of approximately 350 people. The community is at an elevation of approximately 223 feet below sea level and has been experiencing the specific deterioration of the Salton Sea that has been ongoing since the 1970s, when the sea began losing its recreational viability as the water became increasingly saline and increasingly contaminated with agricultural runoff from the Imperial Valley. The Salton Sea's surface level has been declining as agricultural water use efficiency has reduced the inflow that historically maintained the lake level. As the sea shrinks, the exposed lakebed, called the playa, produces dust containing selenium, pesticide residues, and other agricultural chemicals that have concentrated in the terminal basin over decades. The California Air Resources Board has documented the Salton Sea playa as a significant source of PM2.5 particulate matter that exceeds health standards in the surrounding communities. Bombay Beach has already been largely abandoned as a functional resort community. The boat launches are yards from dry lake bed. The old resort infrastructure is a documented ruin, and the current residents are a mix of long-term retirees, artists, and people who moved there specifically for the specific post-apocalyptic aesthetic that the declining sea creates. It is not becoming a ghost town. It is already one that people are aestheticizing. Number 4, McDowell County Communities, West Virginia. McDowell County, West Virginia, was once the heart of the nation's coal industry. Welch, the county seat, was known in the 1950s as the Little New York of Appalachia for its commercial density and economic activity. The county's coal production sustained communities with thousands of workers. McDowell County's population peaked at approximately 98,000 in 1950. The 2020 census counted approximately 19,000 residents. The coal industry contraction has been consistent and documented. McDowell County now has one of the highest poverty rates in the United States, above 30%, and one of the lowest life expectancy rates, affected by the opioid crisis that has struck Appalachian communities with documented severity. The county seat of Welch, once a commercial hub, now has a population of approximately 2,100 and a downtown that is predominantly vacant storefronts. The specific communities within McDowell County, Kimball, Gary, North Fork, Iger, Switchback, and others, are the places that will not be recognizable communities by 2040 in any meaningful sense. Some are already there. Gary, West Virginia, which had a population of approximately 1,600 in 2000, was documented at approximately 500 in 2020. The City Methodist Church in Gary, built in 1922 when the community had a future, stands as a documented ruin in the woods. Number 3, Ile de Jean Charles, Terrebonne Parish, Louisiana. Ile de Jean Charles is a narrow strip of land in Terrebonne Parish in southern Louisiana, approximately 2 miles long and less than a quarter-mile wide, that has been the home of a Biloxi Chitimacha Choctaw community for generations. The island has lost approximately 98% of its land mass since 1955. The combination of Louisiana's broader coastal land loss crisis, driven by oil and gas canal cutting, levee construction that cut off sediment replenishment to the delta and sea level rise, and the island's specific low-lying vulnerability, has reduced it from 22,000 acres in 1955 to approximately 320 acres in 2020. The state of Louisiana and the federal government acknowledged the island situation as a managed retreat scenario by 2016, when Louisiana received a $48 million HUD grant specifically to relocate the Ile de Jean Charles community to higher ground. The relocation process has been complex and contested. Not all community members want to leave, and the cultural attachment to the island is documented as deep and genuine in interviews with residents. By 2040, the physical island will almost certainly not be continuously habitable. The The land loss rate has been approximately 1,500 acres per decade for the past several decades. What remains will be subject to flooding on a frequency that makes year-round habitation functionally impossible rather than merely challenging. Isle de Jean Charles is the most documented example of climate-driven managed retreat in the United States, but it is not unique in coastal Louisiana. The broader Terrebonne and Lafourche Parish coastal zone is losing land at a rate that the Louisiana Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, CPRA, estimates at approximately 3,300 acres per year statewide, one of the highest coastal land loss rates in the world. The Louisiana Master Plan for a Sustainable Coast, updated periodically since 2007, documents which communities are being prioritized for storm protection investment and which are implicitly outside the defensive perimeter. The communities outside the defensive perimeter, the string of fishing villages, Native American communities, and Vietnamese American fishing communities that developed in the coastal marshes south and east of the major levee systems, are on a trajectory that the state's own planning documents acknowledge cannot be reversed at current investment levels. The Isle de Jean Charles relocation is the first formally acknowledged managed retreat of a climate-vulnerable community in the contiguous United States, but it will not be the last in Louisiana. The state has identified multiple coastal communities in similar positions. The cultural dimension is the part of the story that data does not capture. The Biloxi Chitimacha Choctaw community of Isle de Jean Charles has been on this island since their ancestors were pushed there by forced relocation in the 19th century. The land that is disappearing is not just a place to live. It is the specific geography of a community's identity. Number 2. Greensburg, Kansas, Kiowa County. Greensburg, Kansas is a small town in Kiowa County in southwestern Kansas with a population of approximately 780 people, a figure that represents both the aftermath of population decline and the recovery from the tornado that destroyed 95% of the town on the night of May 4, 2007. The EF5 tornado, with winds estimated at over 205 miles per hour, destroyed essentially everything above ground in Greensburg in approximately 20 minutes, killing 11 people and leaving the population with nothing. What Greensburg did with the rebuilding is genuinely unusual. The community chose to rebuild as the most sustainable small town in America, installing wind turbines, geothermal heating, and building the most LEED-certified buildings per capita of any city in the country. The story got national attention. The town got written about extensively as a model for resilient community rebuilding. The specific problem is that the population was declining before the tornado and is declining again after the rebuild. Kiowa County is in the High Plains agricultural belt, where the Ogallala Aquifer, the underground water source that sustains agriculture across the Great Plains, is being depleted at rates that USGS documents as unsustainable on a multi-decade timeline. When the Ogallala is exhausted in specific areas, the agricultural economy that sustains Greensburg and dozens of similar High Plains communities goes with it. As water policy expert and Kansas State University professor David Litka described the Ogallala situation, the aquifer depletion in southwest Kansas isn't a future risk. It's a current reality in some areas. The communities that depend on irrigation agriculture are looking at a 20 to 30-year window before the economic model changes fundamentally. Number 1. Miami Beach, Miami-Dade County, Florida. Miami Beach is not a small town, a mining community, or a declining rural place. It is a barrier island city of approximately 82,000 permanent residents with one of the most valuable real estate markets in the United States and a global tourism economy. Its inclusion at number 1 is deliberately provocative and entirely supported by the scientific literature and by the city's own planning documents. Miami Beach sits on a barrier island at an average elevation of approximately 3.9 feet above sea level, the lowest of any major American city. The island is built on porous limestone bedrock that allows tidal water to percolate upward through the rock regardless of surface barriers. Seawalls cannot prevent the flooding that occurs through the ground rather than over it. king tide flooding. Tidal flooding without any storm, just high astronomical tides, already flood streets in Miami Beach multiple times per year. The city has invested over $500 million in elevated roads, stormwater pump systems, and related infrastructure. NOAA's sea level rise projections for the South Florida coast, under intermediate scenarios, show 1 to 2 feet of additional sea level rise by 2060 and 2 to 4 feet by 2100. At one point, 5 feet of additional rise, which is within the intermediate projection range for 2060. Significant portions of Miami Beach's lowest elevation neighborhoods experience nuisance flooding on a regular basis that makes normal residential and commercial function difficult. At 3 feet of additional rise, the lowest portions of the island approach uninhabitability. By 2040, Miami Beach will not be a ghost town. By 2060, the flood frequency in the lowest elevation sections will be forcing difficult decisions. By 2100, the island's long-term viability as a permanently inhabited community under most sea level rise scenarios has been assessed by multiple scientific groups as requiring either extraordinary engineering intervention, essentially rebuilding the island at higher elevation, or managed retreat. The managed retreat scenario is what ghost town looks like at Miami Beach scale. 17 places, from a coal fire that won't go out for 200 years, to a swamp that keeps losing land, to a barrier island city that may be the most expensive real estate in America and the most expensive engineering problem simultaneously. The forces that end communities are patient. They have been working on most of these places for decades already. Hit that like button and subscribe. More content like this coming.